Greetings everybody and welcome here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're back with the Hard Rock 7, the series that I'm currently running. It's a mini series, so there's only 7 episodes. This is episode number 5. So for those of you who are new and haven't seen the first 4 episodes, I'll just give you a brief rundown. So I've picked 7 hard rock bands that I think are influential, have been very well known, very notoriety, I guess, and that I like. That was part of the problem I had with the original Big Six series, is that I didn't pick those bands. They were just the Big Six that were sort of known on the internet, and I just wanted to do a video on them, so which I did. And I took a little bit of heat because one of the bands I really didn't know all that well, and people said I shouldn't be commenting about something I don't know very well. Well, that's good because I've lived my whole life commenting on things I don't know very well. But I decided that I would change it up a bit, and then I would pick the 7 that I liked and I think fall into this thing. These are the 7 bands I think are the most influential, the biggest 7 hard rock bands in history. I did have 13 or 14 in there originally, and I took half of them out and decided to go with a 7, and I will do the other ones in an honorable mention and explain why they didn't quite make it in my opinion, and you of course have your own opinion about how that's going to go. The other thing is that these are all bands I think have had a lot of influence on a lot of different bands, and not always in the genre you think they would. And a lot of these bands, I primarily think of them as hard rock bands, but most of them have other elements to their music. Some of these bands are more of a rock and roll, hard rock and roll band. Some of them have progressive elements to the music. Some are bluesy as hell. And today's band has a little bit of that bluesy influence in it, but think of themselves, and I can see why they think of themselves as a rock and roll band in the traditional style, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They are very much about that, and they've taken some hits for some of their songs they've written for that reason, but they're big enough they got big balls, right? And of course you know where I'm going with this. Australians' own AC/DC had to be a band in this list. This may be the biggest rock band in the world right now. And a few years ago, I thought they were kind of drifting a bit and might, they got Axl Rose in there to replace Johnson, and then they got a couple of other people that were playing. There was just basically Angus left, and I'm thinking, well, this is just an Angus Young cover band of AC/DC. But now you got all these members are back. Rick Rudd is now back in there. Cliff Williams is now back in there. Brian Johnson's hearing problem seems to be corrected enough for him to now tour as well. So now you got, and Steve Young is back too. So now you've got pretty close to the classic lineup of the band. So I'm interested to see if they do any more albums. So we'll see what happens. So anyways, as I've been doing with all the other bands, just remember this is just my opinion, and this is not the definitive hard rock 7. This is just the 7 that I think belong there. So this band started in 73, or kind of, that's when the era started, 73. Actually, that's when they started, and they're still operating presently in present day. 18 studio albums in total. This may be considered their best, their magnus opus, their Back in Black album. Some people don't like the Johnson era and would probably go with Highway to Hell. I'm not going to argue with either of those choices. I like both albums quite a bit. To me, they're both great albums. This one was the one I came in the door on. Had a huge impact on me and many other people. Things sold 40 million albums. Yeah, I guess it would have a big impact, right? Their last album is the Power Up album, which came out in 2020. So the one thing about AC/DC that kind of reminds me, they kind of remind me of my own country's Bachman-Turner Overdrive, or Bachman-Turner Overdrive if you're going to be politically correct. Because they developed a formula for songwriting and they've continued with it. And that's one of the knocks on AC/DC sometimes, is that one album after another sounds the same. No album sounds like this one, but the rest of them all just kind of follows this program thing. But that's what they like to play, and AC/DC fans love that. But outsiders maybe see it as not being such a good thing. And it's the same thing with Bachman Turner Overdrive. Anyways, the classic era of this band for me started when they became an international success in '75, and to me continued through their 1981 For Those About to Rock album. Yeah, I think that was the one. And then after that it kind of waned a bit, but up until that point I think that you would call that the classic era. I tend to be partial to the Bon Scott era of the group, primarily because I think the band was a little more tongue-in-cheek, a little bit more cheeky, more hard rockish, but had a more of a rock and roll flavor. Definitely a sex, drugs, and rock and roll flavor for sure. And they had some antics going on, and they were, not a band to be trifled with, as Malcolm Young showed Geezer Butler. Yeah. Anyways, a really good rock and roll band, which I think of as a hard rock band. I know that some people have labeled them as a metal band because of this album, but even this album I think isn't really metal, it's hard rock. Okay, so the members of the AC/DC fraternity are quite numerous, although most of these people were short-lived and from the earlier era before the band became an international success. But still, there's a fair number of members of this band. I think I've counted 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 members in total. But again, a good chunk of these people came early on in their career. So the members, Angus, Malcolm, Steve Young, all members of the band at times. Phil Rudd, of course. Unfortunately, Malcolm's gone, but that's why Steve's in there. Phil Rudd, Cliff Williams, Brian Johnson, Bon Scott, Larry Van Crete, Dave Evans, Mark Evans, no relation, Colin Burgess, Neil Smith, Ron Carpenter, Russell Coleman, Noel Taylor, Bob Bailey, Peter Clark, Paul Matters, Simon Wright, and Chris Slade. So again, a lot of these were drummers or bass players that were in the band early on and weren't there when they hit their international success, most of them. A lot of really good classic albums by these guys. Even those first two Australian release only albums were good. I think the second one was better than the first one, but they really hit their stride with that second album, and then they took the best of those two albums and released an international one with the same title as the second album. And that album, which I have right here, so I'm just going to pull it off the shelf. I don't normally do. I haven't been doing this with the oh, now I can't find it. Where is it? Here it is. No, I'm mixing them up with my oh, here it is. Sorry, thought I saw it. Anyways, so this album kind of started it rolling. Lots of good stuff on this album, hard rock and stuff, but also rock and roll stuff, and now a lot of that sex, drugs, and rock and roll, kind of quirky stuff too, like Big Balls and a few other things like that. So I don't even have my glass. Oh, here they are. Just want to talk about this album a little bit because this is kind of the one that launched it for them, I think. Although not hugely, they did get some international success with this. TNT's on this. A long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, and this may be the song that best illustrates what AC/DC is, in my opinion. She's Got Balls. No, Big Balls is on the other album, sorry. High Voltage and Live Wire, both really good hard rockin' tracks. And of course this also has the Jack on it too. So lots of different stuff at this point, but they more coalesced as they went along with the next few albums, Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, and then till they got to The Highway to Hell, which was the pinnacle album for the Bon Scott era. And then he died, and within a month he was replaced by Brian Johnson, and they started with this monster hit album. So this band has a real catchy way of writing tunes. The riff mastering of Malcolm Young is, to me, one of the greatest things of this band, and he is one of the great riff masters of rock history. I'm a huge fan of Malcolm Young. I think he's the guy that kind of made those catchy riffs, and I was very sad when he passed away. Such a classic member of such a classic band. This band probably got a lot of influence from the Rolling Stones. He had some similar sounds to them early on, but they've evolved into what they are now. And also this band is still rocking. They're still out there making. They've made albums as recently as 2020. They're still making new stuff. And now the classic band is kind of back together, with minus Malcolm and being replaced by his nephew Steve. I think this is just a band that is probably at the top of the rock world. I don't think there's a bigger draw out there. I don't think there's a better band still playing rock music out there than AC/DC. Are they the best rock band of all time? No, I don't think they are, but they're definitely up there and definitely should be taken seriously. I personally prefer, like I said, the Bon Scott era, but I do appreciate the fact that here is a band that were pinnacleizing at the top of their career, and lose a frontman like Bon Scott who's not replaceable, and they find a guy like Brian Johnson to fit in there. And no, I don't think Brian Johnson is quite as good as Bon Scott, but God, he's very close. He's definitely what they needed when they got him. So there you have it. That's it for today's episode of Hard Rock 7. If you've got any comments about anything I've said, please put them in the comment section below. Anything about AC/DC that you think I should know or think that I messed up on, put that down there. Do you think the classic era 75 to 81 is a good reference of this band, or do you think it went on a little longer, or do you think maybe they go back to the Australian releases prior to that? How do you feel about the newer stuff they put out over the last decade or so, or now that the band is back to its kind of classic lineup? Are you expecting stuff to happen? Maybe something will happen that is maybe a new album by them that might, kind of bring back AC/DC. Not that they're dead or anything like that, because I don't think they are. But any comments about any of those things or anything in general, you can put down there. Please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. And we'll be back tomorrow with day 6 and band number 6. So have yourself a good one. Take care. Goodbye.